All right, we got to talk about what's going on because Boeing is warning some big layoffs are on the horizon as 400 people who are working on the SLS project with NASA is going to be canceled. Now, NASA has been talking about how they want to go to the moon several times, constant delays. At this point, you probably much rather get a private company to do it. Boeing warned on Saturday that its space launch system moon rocket program is expected to have 400 fewer positions in line with revisions to NASA's Artemis program. Cost is getting pretty high. This is what you're seeing here. And Boeing in space also doesn't really seem that great either because Boeing's capsule couldn't really get astronauts back down from the International Space Station. Astronauts stranded by Boeing are set to finally come home. Company remains lost. NASA had to get SpaceX to do the job. This is how bad the company has become. So far, Boeing and the stock price is just simply dropping. And having 400 employees being fired off is just the tip of the iceberg, as many more will probably get laid off very soon. I mean, when you have the stock price down almost 50% in the past 5 years, and in the past 10 years, stock price just really hasn't went up. I mean, prices of Boeing stock is almost down to 2014 and 2015 prices. Boeing stock in the past year has also done terrible, down 13%. At one point, the stock price was down 34%. It's recovered quite a bit, but let's see what happens next. So far, Boeing isn't great as investors are fleeing and revenue is at an all-time low. Boeing CEO is also pretty hyped up about the recovery plan. Now, don't get me wrong, Boeing, it's a decent company. Okay, it's one of the last big manufacturing companies left in the United States. We've already given up ship production, but at least we're still making airplanes. But at the same time, the company is reporting the biggest annual loss since the pandemic in 2020. Posted nearly a $4 billion loss for the fourth quarter, has also taken massive changes in its defense and airline units. And Boeing has done so poorly that even the CEO has been switched recently. And when you look at Boeing and some of their enormous amounts of layoffs, you kind of understand why they're really struggling. Also, competition is on the rise for Boeing, and I'm not sure if they can meet this sort of competition, especially from China. At the end of the day, Boeing is laying off a crap ton of people. A lot of people are losing their jobs. In fact, over 10 to 15,000 people just a couple years ago have been fired from Boeing. So far, the stock price is doing terribly. Investors are also withdrawing their money. And also, even their space and moon and rocket sectors are facing potential layoffs. To make things worse, the Federal Reserve is holding rates steady. At first, Trump is pretty angry about that, but now Trump agrees with the Federal Reserve, and they've decided to hold interest rates steady. If you guys have tried to buy a car right now or get a mortgage, you probably notice that it's extremely expensive. Trying to get a house right now is one of the most difficult things to do. And right now, with loans being so expensive, I don't think a lot of companies are going to Boeing and buying airplanes. This is one of the reasons why the revenue for Boeing is so terrible right now. And if you also look at the competition in the East, also have Comax, C919 by China, rapid production boosting challenge to Airbus and Boeing. Used to be a duopoly, right? Used to be the airline industry dominated by two companies, America's Boeing and France's Airbus. Now you got China's C919, which is getting enormous orders by Chinese airliners. By the way, Chinese airliners are one of the biggest purchasers of airplanes from Airbus and Boeing. So the fact that they're turning towards their domestic C919 airplane shows you how much confidence they have in the plane. And by the way, the C919 has flown many times with no problems, and the reviews are pretty great. It's a smaller plane compared to some of the Boeing Airbuses, but at the end of the day, it gets the job done, and the reputation is very, very good. So Boeing is already, I don't blame them, sweating bullets right now. They're pretty scared. A lot of their things that they touch have not ended well. Right now, their rocket program is having layoffs. Capsules made by Boeing can't get astronauts home. And people aren't exactly buying airplanes, which is causing Boeing to have some of the biggest losses ever in its company history. Let's see what happens next to Boeing.